Ben Miller gripped the controls of his cargo ship as warning lights flashed across the dashboard. The engine made a grinding noise that no pilot ever wanted to hear. Smoke filled the small cockpit, and he could smell burning metal. "Come on, old girl," he muttered to his ship. "Just a little further." Ben had been a cargo pilot for 8 years. He delivered medical supplies, food, and equipment to remote space stations across this sector of the galaxy. It was honest work, and it paid well enough to keep his ship running. Today's delivery was especially important, vaccines for a mining colony that desperately needed them. But his ship had other plans. The engine coughed once more and went silent. Ben watched his speed drop rapidly. Below him, a blue and green planet filled his view. He had never seen it before, but right now it looked like salvation. "Emergency landing procedures," he said aloud, running through his checklist. "Find a flat spot. Avoid populated areas. Try not to crash." Ben aimed for what looked like a large open area near some tall buildings. The structures had an odd, flowing design that didn't look human-made. As he got closer, he could see beings moving around the buildings. They were tall and slender with blue-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. His ship hit the ground hard. Ben's head snapped forward, then back. Stars exploded across his vision. When they cleared, he found himself sitting in a smoking cockpit, very much alive. "Well," he said, unbuckling his safety harness. "That could have gone worse." Ben grabbed his emergency kit and stepped outside. The air was breathable, which was lucky. The gravity felt close to Earth normal. Around him, the alien beings had stopped what they were doing and were staring at his crashed ship. One of them approached. Ben raised his hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "Hello," he said slowly. "My ship broke down. I need help fixing it." The being tilted its head. It wore flowing robes covered in intricate patterns that seemed to move and shift. When it spoke, Ben was surprised to hear words he could understand. "Human," the being said. Its voice was musical, like wind chimes. "You have arrived at a most unusual time. I'm sorry for crashing here," Ben said. "I didn't mean to interrupt anything. I just need to repair my engine and I'll be on my way." The being's large eyes grew wider. "You do not know where you are." Ben looked around. The buildings were even more impressive up close. They seemed to be carved from a single piece of white stone, with curves and spirals that defied normal architecture. Gardens filled with strange, colorful plants surrounded each structure. The whole place had an air of importance and ceremony. "I'm guessing somewhere important," Ben said. "This is the sacred temple of Zirian," the being said. "Today is the day of royal bonding. Queen Zara selects her life partner through the ancient ceremony." Ben felt a sinking sensation in his stomach. "And I just crashed into the middle of it." Before the being could answer, a loud bell began to ring. Other beings in elaborate robes appeared from the buildings. They formed 2 lines creating a pathway toward the largest structure. "The ceremony begins," the being said urgently. "You must leave immediately." "I'm trying to," Ben said. "But my ship isn't going anywhere." The being looked at his smoking vessel and made a sound that might have been a sigh. "Follow me. Quickly. I will hide you until the ceremony is complete." Ben grabbed his emergency kit and followed the being toward a smaller building. But as they hurried along the edge of the gathering crowd, he heard another sound, a deep rumbling that he recognized immediately. "Engine failure," he said, stopping. "Something's wrong with one of your ships." The being looked confused. "Our ships do not make such sounds." Ben looked up and saw a sleek vessel descending toward the temple. But its approach was erratic, and smoke trailed from one side. As he watched, it began to spin. "It's going to crash," Ben said. "Right into that crowd." Without thinking, he ran toward the gathering. The beings in ceremonial robes were so focused on their ritual that they hadn't noticed the danger above. Ben could see the ship's pilot fighting the controls, but it was too late for a controlled landing. The ship was going to hit the largest building where most of the crowd had gathered. "Move!" Ben shouted, waving his arms. "Everyone move!" Some of the beings looked at him in shock. Others began to realize what was happening above them. But there were too many people and not enough time. Ben saw a group of young beings directly in the crash path. They wore simpler robes and seemed to be students or assistants. None of them had noticed the danger. He sprinted toward them as the ship fell from the sky. At the last second, he tackled 3 of the young beings, pushing them away from the impact zone. The ship hit the ground where they had been standing, sliding across the stone courtyard in a shower of sparks and debris. Ben rolled to his feet, checking to make sure the young beings were unharmed. They stared at him with wide eyes, their blue skin pale with shock. "Are you hurt?" he asked. They shook their heads, too stunned to speak. "Good," Ben said. He looked around and saw that while his quick action had saved the students, the ceremony area was now chaos. Beings were running in all directions. The carefully arranged ritual space was destroyed. At the center of it all stood a female being unlike the others. She was taller, with skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. Her robes were the color of deep space, covered in patterns that looked like constellations. A crown of what appeared to be crystallized starlight rested on her head. Even in the chaos, Ben could tell she was someone very important. And from the way she was looking at him, he could tell she was not pleased. "You," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the courtyard. "Human. You have disrupted the most sacred ceremony of our people." Ben walked toward her, his hands raised peacefully. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty. I was just trying to help. That ship was going to crash into the crowd." "I am Queen Zara of Zirion," she said. "And you have destroyed the day of royal bonding." "I really am sorry," Ben said. "But people could have been killed." Queen Zara's expression was unreadable. Around them, other beings were beginning to gather again. Many wore expressions of anger or confusion. Ben noticed that some of them had weapons. "The ceremony cannot be repeated for another full cycle," Queen Zara said. "Our ancient laws are very specific." "Maybe we can figure out another solution," Ben said. "I'm good at fixing things." One of the robed figures stepped forward. "Your Majesty, the human has violated sacred ground. The law requires immediate punishment." Queen Zara held up her hand. "The law also requires that we complete what was begun." The ceremony was interrupted, but not ended. She walked toward the largest building, which Ben now realized was a temple. Despite the crash, its main structure remained intact. At its center stood a tall crystal formation that seemed to pulse with its own light. "The crystal of bonding chooses the queen's partner," she explained as Ben followed her inside. "The ceremony required me to place my hand upon it while the sacred words were spoken. Then, whoever the crystal accepts will be revealed as my destined mate." Ben looked at the beautiful crystal. It was taller than him and multifaceted like a giant diamond. Colors swirled within it like trapped aurora. "That's amazing," he said. "Your technology is incredible." "It is not technology," Queen Zara said. "It is ancient magic, passed down from our ancestors." Before Ben could ask what she meant, another rumbling sound filled the air. Through the temple's opening, he could see that the crashed ship was starting to smoke more heavily. "The fuel cells are going to explode," Ben said. "Everyone needs to get away from here." Queen Zara looked skeptical. "Our ships do not explode." "That one will," Ben said. "Trust me." He could see the other beings outside still gathering around the crash site, trying to help the pilot. They had no idea of the danger. "How long?" Queen Zara asked. Ben studied the smoke patterns and listened to the sounds coming from the wreckage. "Maybe 5 minutes." Queen Zara made a decision. She placed her hand on the crystal and began speaking in her own language. The words were musical and ancient sounding. "What are you doing?" Ben asked. "Completing the ceremony," she said. "If I die today, our people need to know who would have been chosen." The crystal began to glow brighter. Ben could feel warmth radiating from it. "You should get to safety," he said. "I cannot leave until the bonding is complete," Queen Zara replied. Outside, Ben could hear the sounds of evacuation beginning. But he knew they wouldn't have enough time. The fuel cells were becoming unstable too quickly. "Is there anything I can do to help?" he asked. "Place your hand beside mine on the crystal," Queen Zara said. "If you are near when the ceremony concludes, you may be protected by the same magic that protects me." Ben didn't really believe in magic, but he was willing to try anything. He placed his hand on the crystal next to Queen Zara's. The moment his skin touched the smooth surface, the crystal exploded with light. Ben felt a surge of energy run through his body. Images flashed through his mind, scenes from Queen Zara's life, her thoughts, her emotions. For just a moment, he could see the world through her eyes. Then the light faded, and they stood in silence. "Well," Queen Zara said quietly. "This is unexpected." "What happened?" Ben asked. "The crystal has chosen," she said. "According to the ancient laws of Zirian, you are now my bonded mate." Ben blinked. "I'm your what?" "My husband," Queen Zara said. "By the most sacred laws of our people, we are now married." Before Ben could respond, the crashed ship outside finally exploded. The temple shook, but its ancient walls held strong. Through the entrance, they could see the evacuation had been successful, everyone had escaped the blast. "You saved many lives today," Queen Zara said. "Both with your warning about the crash, and by helping me complete the ceremony that will protect our people's future." "But I don't understand," Ben said. "How can we be married?" "I just touched a crystal." "The crystal of bonding has chosen you as my destined partner," Queen Zara explained. "This bond cannot be broken. It is written in law older than our recorded history." Ben looked around the temple, trying to process what had just happened. An hour ago, he had been a simple cargo pilot with a broken ship. Now he was apparently married to an alien queen. "What happens next?" he asked. Queen Zara's expression was unreadable. "Now, Ben Miller of Earth, you must learn to be a king." 3 weeks had passed since Ben Miller became the accidental husband of Queen Zara. The palace of Zirian was unlike anything he had ever imagined. Towers of crystalline stone reached toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float without support. Gardens filled with plants that glowed softly in the evening filled every courtyard. Ben stood on one of the high balconies, watching the sunrise paint the alien landscape in shades of purple and gold. His cargo ship had been repaired and sat in the palace hangar, but he was no longer a simple pilot. The royal advisors had made that very clear. "Your Majesty," came a voice behind him. Ben turned to see advisor Corinne approaching. Corinne was an elderly Zirian with silver skin and robes that changed color based on his mood. Currently, they were a worried shade of gray. "Just call me Ben," he said for the 100th time. "I'm still getting used to all this." "The morning council meeting is about to begin," Corinne said. "Today we discussed the crop failures in the southern provinces." Ben nodded and followed Corinne through the winding corridors. The palace walls were covered in murals that told the history of Zirian. Ben had spent many hours studying them, trying to understand his new world. The council chamber was a circular room with a domed ceiling that showed the current sky above the palace. Queen Zara sat at a curved table made from what looked like solid moonlight. Around her, 12 advisors waited in their ceremonial robes. "Good morning," Ben said, taking his seat beside Zara. The advisors still looked uncomfortable when he spoke. Most of them believed humans were too primitive to understand Zirian politics. "Lord Ben," Queen Zara said formally. In private, she called him by his first name, but in council meetings, protocol required titles. Advisor Fen will present the situation in the agricultural regions. Advisor Fen stood. His robes were deep green with patterns that moved like growing vines. Your Majesties, the situation grows worse each day. The blight has now affected 60% of our food crops. Our agricultural scientists believe the soil itself has become poisoned. Ben leaned forward. What kind of testing have you done on the soil? The advisors looked at each other. Advisor Fen's robes shifted to a confused yellow color. Testing, Your Majesty. Chemical analysis, Ben explained. Looking at what nutrients are missing or what toxins might be present. Our scientists have used the traditional methods, Advisor Corinne said carefully. They have consulted the ancient agricultural texts and performed the proper rituals. Ben tried not to show his frustration. In the 3 weeks since his arrival, he had discovered that Xerian society relied heavily on tradition and ceremony. While their technology was incredibly advanced, their approach to problem-solving was often rigid. Have any of you actually been to the affected farms? Ben asked. The question caused an uncomfortable silence. Queen Zara raised an eyebrow. Explain your meaning, Lord Ben. I mean physically going to the farms, Ben said. Looking at the crops, talking to the farmers, seeing the problem firsthand. Advisor Fen looked shocked. Your Majesty, members of the Royal Council do not visit agricultural sites. We receive reports from the regional governors. And what do these reports say? Ben asked. That the crops are dying and the farmers are concerned, Fen replied. Ben stood up. I'd like to visit these farms myself. The room erupted in whispers. Several advisors looked horrified at the suggestion. Your Majesty, Advisor Corinne said urgently, such a visit would be highly irregular. There are protocols to follow. Security concerns. Proper preparations would take weeks. The crops don't have weeks, Ben said. Queen Zara, may I have permission to investigate this problem in my own way? Queen Zara studied him carefully. Over the past 3 weeks, she had begun to appreciate Ben's different perspective, even when it challenged Xerian traditions. Very well, she said. But you will take a security escort. 2 hours later, Ben found himself in a royal transport flying toward the southern provinces. The escort consisted of Captain Vera, the head of Queen Zara's personal guard, and 6 other guards who clearly thought this was a waste of time. Captain Vera was a skilled warrior with bronze-colored skin and the ability to move so quietly that Ben often forgot she was there. She had been assigned to protect him and seemed to take the job very seriously. The first farm is ahead, she announced. Ben looked out the window and saw vast fields that should have been green with growing crops. Instead, the plants were brown and withered. Some areas looked completely barren. They landed near a farmhouse where several Xerian farmers waited nervously. Ben could tell they had never seen royalty visit their farm before. Hello, Ben said, walking toward them with his hands visible and empty. I'm Ben. I'm here to learn about your crop problems. The farmers looked confused. They had probably expected formal speeches and ceremonial greetings. An older farmer stepped forward. Your Majesty, we are honored by your presence. Though I fear there is little to see but failure. Sometimes failure teaches us more than success, Ben said. Can you show me around? For the next hour, Ben walked through the fields with the farmers. He asked them to explain when the problem started, which crops were affected first, and what they had tried to fix the situation. The blight appeared suddenly, the old farmer explained. First in the valley fields, then spreading upward toward the hills. Nothing we plant will grow properly anymore. Ben knelt down and scooped up a handful of soil. It felt wrong, too dry and sandy. Has the soil always been like this? No, Your Majesty. It used to be rich and dark. Good for growing. Ben looked around at the landscape. The affected farms were all in low-lying areas near a river. The healthy farms were on higher ground. "What's upstream from here?" he asked. The farmers looked at each other. "The Corvex mining operation," one of them said quietly. Ben had heard that name before. Corvex was one of the largest industrial companies on Zirion. They extracted rare minerals used in advanced technology. "When did they start mining upstream?" Ben asked. "About 2 years ago," the old farmer replied. "The same time our troubles began." Ben spent another hour examining the river water and taking samples of soil from different areas. Captain Vera watched with growing interest as he worked. "You believe the mining operation is connected to the crop failures?" she asked. "It's possible," Ben said. "On my world, we learned that industrial activities can contaminate water and soil if not properly managed." That evening, they returned to the palace. Ben went straight to Queen Zara's private chambers, where he found her reviewing official documents. "How was your investigation?" she asked. Ben sat down beside her. "I think the mining company is poisoning the water supply. The contamination flows downstream and kills the crops." Queen Zara set down her documents. "That is a serious accusation. Corvex Industries is one of our most important companies. They employ thousands of people and provide materials essential to our technology. I'm not saying they're doing it on purpose," Ben explained. "But their mining process might be creating toxic runoff that gets into the river system. What do you propose?" "We need to test the water and soil scientifically," Ben said. "Not just rely on traditional methods. We need to understand exactly what chemicals are present and where they're coming from." Queen Zara considered this. "Such testing would require equipment we do not currently possess." "Actually, you do," Ben said. "Your medical facilities have analysis equipment that could be adapted for environmental testing. I've seen similar setups on space stations." The next morning, Ben presented his findings to the council. The advisors listened with expressions ranging from skepticism to alarm. "You wish us to accuse Corvex Industries based on soil samples and farmer testimony?" Advisor Fenn asked. "I want us to gather scientific evidence," Ben corrected. "If the mining operation is contaminating the water, we can work with them to fix the problem. If it's something else, we'll keep looking." "And if Corvex refuses to cooperate?" Advisor Corinne asked. Ben looked around the table. "Then we have a bigger problem than crop failures." Queen Zara made the decision to support Ben's investigation. Within a week, they had confirmed that mining runoff was indeed contaminating the river system. The chemicals used to extract rare minerals were toxic to plant life. When confronted with the evidence, Corvex Industries initially denied responsibility. Their executives claimed that their operations met all traditional safety standards. "Traditional standards weren't designed for this type of mining," Ben explained during a tense meeting with company representatives. "We need new approaches for new challenges." The negotiations took several days. Corvex executives argued that implementing new filtration systems would be expensive and time-consuming. Ben countered by pointing out that the destroyed farmland would cost the kingdom much more in the long run. Finally, Queen Zara issued a royal decree. Corvex would implement new environmental protections within 3 months, or face the loss of their mining licenses. But the crisis was far from over. While the new filtration systems would prevent future contamination, the damaged farmland would take time to recover. Food shortages were becoming a serious concern. "We need alternative food sources," Ben told the council. "And we need them quickly. Perhaps we could increase imports from other kingdoms," Advisor Corinne suggested. "That would make us dependent on foreign suppliers," Queen Zara pointed out. A dangerous position. Ben had been thinking about this problem for days. What if we could restore the damaged soil faster than natural recovery would allow? How? Several advisors asked at once. On Earth, farmers use crop rotation and soil treatment techniques to repair damaged land, Ben explained. Different plants can actually help heal contaminated soil. The agricultural scientists were skeptical, but they agreed to test Ben's suggestions on a small scale. To everyone's surprise, the earth-based techniques worked better than expected. Plants that could tolerate contaminated soil gradually cleaned the toxins while growing food crops. Within 2 months, the experimental farms were producing healthy crops again. The news spread quickly throughout the kingdom. But the success also attracted unwanted attention. Reports reached the palace that neighboring kingdoms were taking notice of Zirian's rapid recovery from the agricultural crisis. King Drac of the Northern Territories has sent a message, Queen Zara informed Ben privately. He wishes to discuss our new farming techniques. Ben frowned. That sounds like good news. Why do you look worried? King Drac does not ask for information, Queen Zara explained. He takes what he wants. If he believes we have developed valuable new technologies, he may decide to claim them by force. Would he really start a war over farming techniques? Queen Zara's expression was grim. He has started wars over much less. And if other kingdoms believe we have gained a significant advantage, they may unite against us. Ben realized that solving one problem had created another. His practical approach to fixing the agricultural crisis had worked, but it had also made Zirian a target. What do we do? He asked. We prepare for the possibility of conflict, Queen Zara said. And we hope that your unconventional thinking can find solutions to military problems as well as agricultural ones. As Ben looked out at the peaceful kingdom he had accidentally become part of, he wondered if his next challenge would be protecting it from those who saw innovation as a threat. The threat of war came sooner than expected. Ben stood in the palace war room, studying maps of the surrounding kingdoms. Red markers showed the positions of enemy armies gathering at Zirian's borders. King Drac had convinced 3 other rulers to join his alliance against what he called the dangerous new weapons of Zirian. They believe our agricultural recovery was caused by secret military technology, Queen Zara explained to her council. Drac has convinced them that we pose a threat to the balance of power. General Thex, the head of Zirian's military, pointed to the map. We are outnumbered 4-1. Our traditional defensive positions will not hold against such numbers. Ben studied the terrain carefully. The Zirian military had always relied on static defense, building strong fortifications and waiting for enemies to attack. But against superior numbers, that strategy would fail. What if we don't wait for them to come to us? Ben suggested. The room fell silent. General Thex's skin shifted to a shocked purple color. You suggest we attack first? No, Ben said. I suggest we don't fight where they expect us to fight. Over the next hour, Ben explained his ideas. Instead of manning fixed defensive positions, small groups of Zirian forces could use their superior technology to strike quickly at supply lines and communication centers, then disappear before the enemy could respond. This is highly unconventional, General Thex said. Our forces are trained for traditional warfare. Then we train them differently, Ben replied. We have 2 weeks before the enemy armies are in position. That's enough time to teach new tactics. Queen Zara made the decision to try Ben's approach. The next 2 weeks were intense. Ben worked with General Thex to retrain units in mobile warfare tactics. They practiced hit-and-run attacks, coordinated strikes, and rapid repositioning. When the enemy armies finally advanced, they found empty defensive positions. The expected battle never came. Instead, they faced constant harassment from small Zirian units that appeared, struck vital targets, and vanished. Within a week, the Alliance army was in chaos. Their supply convoys were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. Communication between different units broke down when relay stations were systematically targeted. Morale collapsed as the soldiers realized they were fighting an enemy they could rarely see. King Drac requested a meeting under a flag of truce. Ben and Queen Zara met him at the border, accompanied by a small escort. These tactics are dishonorable, Drac accused. Where is the glory in warfare that skulks in shadows? There's no glory in any warfare, Ben replied. But if you insist on fighting, we'll fight to win. What do you want? Drac demanded. Peace, Queen Zara said simply. Withdraw your armies, and we can discuss trade agreements that benefit everyone. And if we refuse? Ben shrugged. Then you can explain to your people why their food convoys keep disappearing and their communication systems keep failing. The alliance collapsed within 3 days. The other kings blamed Drac for leading them into an unwinnable conflict and returned to their own territories. Drac himself agreed to a non-aggression treaty in exchange for access to Zirian's agricultural techniques. But the victory attracted attention from much farther away. Your Majesties, Advisor Corinne announced urgently one morning. We have received a message from the Galactic Council. Ben had heard of the Galactic Council but never expected to encounter them. They were a governing body of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, species so technologically superior that most others were barely worth their notice. What do they want? Queen Zara asked. They are sending a delegation to investigate reports of unusual developments on Zirian, Corinne read from the official message. They will arrive in 7 days. Ben felt a knot form in his stomach. Are we in trouble? Unknown, Queen Zara said. The Council rarely involves itself in local affairs. For them to send a delegation means they consider our situation significant. The Galactic Council delegation arrived in ships that seemed to bend light around them. Ben watched from the palace balcony as 3 vessels landed in the main courtyard. They were beautiful and terrible at the same time, clearly representing technology beyond anything he could imagine. 5 beings emerged from the ships. They were from different species. One looked like living crystal, another resembled a cloud of energy in a containment suit, and a third appeared to be made of flowing metal. All of them radiated an air of vast intelligence and power. The lead delegate was humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin was silver and its eyes held the depth of ancient stars. When it spoke, its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. I am Counselor Nex of the Galactic Council, it announced. We have come to investigate reports that primitive species have achieved impossible results on this world. Ben felt a flash of irritation at being called primitive, but Queen Zara placed a calming hand on his arm. We welcome you to Zirian, she said formally. How may we assist your investigation? You may begin, Counselor Nex said, by explaining how a recently contacted world managed to solve agricultural contamination in weeks when more advanced civilizations would require years. Queen Zara gestured toward Ben. Perhaps you should ask my husband. Counselor Nex's star-deep eyes focused on Ben. You are the human involved in these developments. I am, Ben said, trying to keep his voice steady. And you're right that I'm primitive compared to you. But sometimes a fresh perspective helps solve old problems. Demonstrate, Counselor Nex commanded. Over the next several hours, Ben explained his approach to the agricultural crisis. He showed the council delegates soil samples, water analysis results, and before and after images of the recovered farmland. He described the crop rotation techniques and soil treatment methods he had adapted from Earth agricultural science. The council delegates listened in silence, occasionally asking technical questions that revealed their vast knowledge. When Ben finished, they conferred among themselves in languages that sounded like music and mathematics combined. Interesting, Counselor Nex finally said. But this represents only applied knowledge from your home world. What of the military innovations that defeated a superior force? Ben explained the mobile warfare tactics, emphasizing how they relied on coordination and adaptability rather than superior firepower. Again, adapted techniques, another delegate observed. What can you offer that is truly new? Before Ben could answer, an alarm began sounding throughout the palace. Captain Vera appeared at his side. Your Majesties, she said urgently. We have received a distress call from the Keldan system. Their star is becoming unstable. Counselor Nex turned to address the crisis. The Keldan are a failed member species of the Council. Their civilization collapsed 300 years ago due to their inability to adapt to changing conditions. They are beyond assistance. What kind of help do they need? Ben asked. Their sun is entering an unexpected phase that will make their planet uninhabitable within months, Captain Vera reported. They are requesting evacuation assistance. How many Keldon are there? Ben continued. Approximately 50,000, Counselor Neck said dismissively. Relocating them would require resources that exceed their value to galactic civilization. Ben felt anger rising in his chest. You're going to let 50,000 people die because it's not cost-effective to save them? They are a failed species, the crystalline delegate said. Evolution demands that the weak be eliminated. That's not evolution, Ben said. That's just cruelty. Queen Zara stepped forward. What would be required to save them? Ships capable of interstellar transport, Counselor Neck said. Temporary habitation facilities. A new world suitable for colonization. The cost would be enormous. What if we could solve their problem instead of just moving them? Ben asked. The council delegates looked skeptical. Their star's instability cannot be corrected. It is a natural stellar phenomenon. Maybe, Ben said. But what if we could protect their planet without moving the star? He began outlining ideas based on technology he had seen on Zirion and other worlds he had visited as a cargo pilot. Orbital solar shields to deflect excess radiation. Atmospheric processors to maintain breathable air. Underground habitation systems for when surface conditions became too harsh. These solutions would still be expensive, Counselor Nex pointed out. But much less expensive than relocating 50,000 people, Ben countered. And the Keldon could contribute their labor and local knowledge. They are a failed species, the energy delegate repeated. They have proven unable to solve their own problems. Everyone fails sometimes, Ben said. That doesn't mean they're worthless. Maybe they just need help seeing solutions they hadn't considered. Queen Zara spoke up. Zirion would be willing to contribute resources to this effort. The council delegates were clearly surprised. You would expend significant resources to save a species you have never encountered. Why not? Ben said. Helping others isn't about what you get back. It's about what kind of galaxy you want to live in. After more discussion, Ben convinced the council to at least investigate his proposed solutions. They traveled to the Keldon system in the council ships, with Ben and Queen Zara as observers. The Keldon were a gentle species with pale green skin and large eyes adapted for low light conditions. Their world was beautiful despite the crisis, crystal cities that captured and reflected the dangerous new light from their changing sun. Ben worked with Keldon engineers and council technicians to implement his solutions. The orbital shields proved effective at filtering the harmful radiation. Atmospheric processors maintained safe air quality. The underground facilities provided secure shelter during the worst stellar flares. But more importantly, the project gave the Keldon hope and purpose. They threw themselves into the work with determination that surprised even Ben. Their local knowledge proved invaluable for adapting the technology to their specific conditions. Within 2 months, the Keldon world was safe and habitable again. The supposedly failed species had not only survived but had become active partners in their own salvation. This outcome was not anticipated, Counselor Nex admitted as they prepared to return to Zirion. That's because you were looking at the problem wrong, Ben said. You saw a failed species that needed to be abandoned. I saw people who needed help. Back on Zirion, the council delegation prepared their final report. Ben and Queen Zara were called to a formal meeting in the main throne room. The Galactic Council has completed its investigation, Counselor Nex announced. We have observed innovations in agriculture, military strategy, and crisis management that exceed expected capabilities for this sector. Ben waited, not sure if this was good or bad news. More significantly, the crystalline delegate continued, we have witnessed problem-solving approaches that challenge our fundamental assumptions about efficiency and resource allocation. The human perspective demonstrates value in preserving rather than discarding struggling civilizations, the energy delegate added. This approach has proven both practical and morally instructive. Counselor next stepped forward. Therefore, the Galactic Council extends an invitation to humanity to join our organization as full members. Ben felt stunned. Just like that? Your species possesses qualities that complement our technological advancement, Counselor Nex explained. You see potential where we see only problems. You find hope where we calculate only costs. The galaxy is vast and filled with challenges, the crystalline delegate said. Perhaps it is time we learn from those we have dismissed as primitive. As the council ships departed, Ben stood with Queen Zara on the palace balcony, watching them disappear into the stars. So, Queen Zara said quietly, it appears your accidental marriage has accidentally changed the galaxy. Ben smiled. I'm still getting used to being married. Being a galactic ambassador might take even longer. Queen Zara took his hand. We will figure it out together. Ben realized that their relationship had evolved far beyond the accidental bonding ceremony. They had become true partners, in marriage, in leadership, and in building a better future for all the species they could help. Together sounds perfect, he said.